I was asked by one of the ladies who ran to the restroom not to start until she came back. You're back. Thank you. All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Tina Clinton. You may know me as Tina Yu, and I will explain that change a little bit later. I was very honored to be asked to come and speak to you about leadership. And I was told that it was primarily women who was the audience. I see that we do have a couple of allies, I call them allies, men who support women who are also here. So it's I will include you as well. It is an honor to be here and to have the opportunity to speak. The title that I decided to utilize for this talk is the past, the present, and the future. And I was also told that I could start with a little bit about my background. So I will start there. And knowing a little bit more about me may help explain some of the things that I may say to you a little bit later. I was born in South Korea, Seoul. I immigrated when I was 4.5 years old. My parents and I got an invitation that was about work, a green card for working for a particular employer. And we moved from South Korea to Maryland. After Maryland, we moved to New York. And after New York, we arrived in Dallas, Texas. We came to Dallas in 1979. And when I moved to the United States, had not had any education at all. So I was too young to start school in Korea. And when I got here, my parents realized that I was supposed to be in kindergarten. So I had kindergarten for 3 months before I went to first grade. I did not speak a lick of English at all, not one word. And back in 1974, there was no ESL, no English as a second language, not even in the Northeast. And so my little teachers had to do their best. So instead of letting me go play, they kept me inside the classroom and they taught me everything the way that they knew how. They pointed at a door and said, "Door." So I would mimic what they said and I would practice. And that teacher also told my mother, "Do not speak English at home because you, Mom, have an accent. She will learn your accent." Instead, what she told my parents was that you need to use Korean at home. Because if you don't use Korean at home, she will forget like that. You don't need to worry about English. She will use and learn English every day. We will help her. That is not your problem. Your problem is that if you don't speak Korean, she will only know English in a matter of a couple of years. And my parents, not knowing anything else, said, "Understand." And they had a policy. When I walked in the door, if I said, "Mom, I'm here," nothing. "Mom, I'm home," nothing. "어머니, 나 왔습니다." 왔니? "오늘 어땠어?" "괜찮았습니다." And I would have to speak Korean if I wanted to speak to my parents at all. And that's how they made sure that I at least know some Korean even today. And so I'm very, very honored because my parents have a great role to do with where I am, how I got here, and even where I am still going. So I want to say, as I look at the room, I am sure that this room has many, many mothers in the room. And if you do not have your own children, you have children that you are raising as a village. Whether it's nieces, nephews, whether it's children in the community, you are mothers in every way in a greater sense, not just the specific sense. So let me also tell you that I have met and I've been blessed to meet wonderful people in my journey. So as I tell this story, I'm going to highlight some of those people every now and then, and I will come back to why I'm doing that. I went to law school in Dallas. I went to undergraduate in Austin, UT Austin. I was a philosophy major. I went to law school and found out that law school was very hard. College was pretty easy. High school was really easy, but law school was a little bit hard. And I learned that I had to, for the first time in my life, learn to study. and I was studying really, really hard. And one of my friends, this was my first year of law school, one of my friends came running through the door while I'm studying. By the way, in law school, you should know, you only have 1 grade per year. It's your final exam, that's it. So if you mess up your 1 grade, right, you have no chance of making up. So if you flunked out 1 test, whew, rough life. So I was studying hard for my 1 test in 5 classes. And one of my friends ran in through the door and she said, guess what? The Court of Appeals is looking for interns. We need to apply. And I said, I have an exam tomorrow. You need to leave. And she said, no. This is an amazing opportunity. This does not happen very often. And I said, I don't have time to apply. I cannot flunk my law school exams. And she said, all they need is a writing example. And I said, I don't have time for a writing example. And she said, didn't you have some writing examples from class? And I said, somewhere. She goes, just find one. And I said, you're not gonna leave me alone until I find one, are you? And she said, nope. And I said, okay. Got on my computer, printed out a writing example, put my name on the top, gave it to her and said, leave. So she left. I have no idea what she did with that writing example. The next thing I know, after final exams, I get a call from the Court of Appeals. And someone there says, I work for Justice Maloney. She has picked you as her summer intern for a clerkship. Please report, and this is how you report. And I thought, she wasn't crazy. My goodness. And I clerked for that judge, and that judge opened the door for all sorts of opportunities after that, because my little friend would not give up when I told her to leave the room. Now, I want to explain to you really fast the structure of Texas courts, because this story doesn't make sense unless you understand how Texas courts are structured. So, you have, on the very, very bottom, city courts. That's where they handle traffic tickets. Then you have county courts, and county courts are established by the county. They're funded by the county, but county courts are elected offices in Texas. On top of the county courts are district courts. The judges there are also elected, but those judges on the district courts are not county employees. They are judges for the state of Texas. In other words, if you say, who is my employer, I would tell you, I am employed by my voters, but I am an employee of the state of Texas, right? Now, those 3 levels, the city courts, the county courts, and the district courts, are all considered to be trial courts. In other words, we figure out what is happening, and if we need to, all of those 3 levels have trials. And in the United States, we have trials by our peers, jurors, patient pun, and those are what we do in those 3 levels. Now, after your trial, if you lose, then you have the right to have an upper level court check to see that the judges and the lawyers on the lower court did their job correctly. We call that an intermediary appellate level in English. So those people check the homework of the 3 levels underneath. And then after that level, there is only one more level, and we call that the highest courts of Texas. Texas is one of the very, very few states that have 2 high courts. We have the Supreme Court and we have the Court of Criminal Appeals. The Supreme Court does everything else but criminal cases. All the criminal cases go to the Court of Criminal Appeals. So there's only 3 levels of court in Texas. The highest appellate court, the intermediary appellate court, and then the trial courts, okay? And then on the trial courts, there's 3 levels. District is the highest, county is middle, and then the municipal city courts are the lowest, all right? So, now, because of the person that I clerked for, right, that judge who selected me was on that intermediary court. She was a judge who checked the homework of the judges who did trials. And so because she was a very high-level judge, when people saw on my resume that I clerked for her, it opened doors and opportunities. She told me when I clerked for her that the next thing I should do is go work for the DA's office. And I said, great. So as my second year law student, I went and I was able to get an internship for the DA's office. In the DA's office, I learned how to do trials. I didn't do them because I was a student, but I watched and I learned. I met judges, I met prosecutors, I met defense attorneys. And after being there for a little while, I was told, you have a future here. If you would like to be a prosecutor, I think you need to put in a resume, and I'm pretty sure that the DA will hire you. And so I became a prosecutor after law school. I did get hired by the DA after being there as an intern, and I was a prosecutor for 10 years. After I left the DA's office, I had an opportunity because another friend called me up and said, did you know the city of Dallas is taking applications for judges? And I said, I'm 36 years old. They're never gonna hire a 36-year-old for a judge. And my friend said, who cares? Just practice. Put in your application and just practice. And I said, practicing isn't bad, okay. So I put in my application, went and interviewed in February, never heard from them, so I thought. So another friend of mine said, you worked for the DA's office, how about you come and work for me in the federal government? And I said, sure, federal government's great, I'll go work for you. So I worked for the federal government for 6 months, and one day in August, I got a phone call. It was a phone number I did not know. And I said hello, and they said, hi, this is the city of Dallas. Your swearing in is in 2 weeks. And I said, my what? And they said, you're swearing in. I said, what is a swearing in? And they said, they selected you to be a judge. You have to take an oath. You have to swear yourself in. And I went, when did they select me to be a judge? Don't you remember you interviewed? I said, that was 6 months ago. And they said, well, that's how long it takes to get appointed. And I went, oh, I did not know that. They said, you are coming, aren't you? And I said, yes. And I turned around and told my friend, thank you for the job in the federal government, but I'm quitting. I'm going to go be a judge. And so I went and I learned to be a judge, because being a judge does not come naturally. So I learned to be a judge. And after being a judge for a couple of years, I decided I really like being a judge. But I don't want to be a judge for the city anymore. I want to be a judge for a county. And so I learned that the only way that you can become a higher level judge, and I knew this because of law school, is that you have to start getting elected. And so I started the process of learning how to get elected in America. In 2010, after a primary runoff and a general, I won my first bench, which was a county court, that second level. And the primary that I had was me on the ballot, Tina Yu. My opponents were Joseph Ramirez Miller and Lashika Walton Barnes. If you are an American, you can figure out, looking at the names, there is a Hispanic person, a black person, and an Asian person. Pretty easy, right? Our names kind of say it all. In the first primary race, Joseph Ramirez Miller had the lowest number, and I had the highest with 48%. But in Texas, in order to win a primary, you have to have over 50%. So that meant that we had to go to a runoff, right? So we had to do another election. I can tell you that in my primary race was funded primarily by me, and I have a law school friend that I went to law school with who is a multimillionaire from being a lawyer. He does not even practice in Texas. I called him and I told him what I was doing, and he said, "How much money do you need?" And I told him, and he bundled money from all the lawyers he knew from all over the United States and sent me money so that I could fund my race. So my first race was because I had a really good law school friend and because I had enough money in the bank to fund myself. That primary runoff is 1 month after the primary. That is it. So you have to raise money really, really fast, and that's really hard. So in 2010, when that happened, I had a Korean American leader in the Dallas community who found out about my race, and he took a personal interest, and he walked himself to every Korean American leader in Dallas and asked them to fund my race. So in a month's time, we were able to raise about $22,000, and I funded that race with that money from the Korean American community. I won by 75%. And then I had to have a general election. By the way, not that it matters for this conversation, but I'm a Democrat. So I was on the Democratic ticket. I had a friend, someone that I know and knew for a long time, who was a Republican. She and I had a great time, nothing personal. We knew this was just about which party won, and I won that time. And so she and I are still great friends. But we won in November. I took the bench for the first time as an elected official in January of 2011. So after having been a municipal judge for 4 years, I became an elected judge. And for 8 years, I had no opponent. I ran two cycles. So 3 races in that 2010 cycle. And then 2014, I had to run again, but I had no opponents. And so I just got automatically reelected. And in 2018, I decided it was time to move up. And so I ran another race. I had a primary, no general, won those races, and I now sit on Criminal District Court number 1, a district court. So I am in the highest of the trial courts. So let me tell you a little bit about not only Texas, or at least Dallas County, which is where my elections are, but also tell you a little bit about my court. My court is the oldest criminal court in the entire state of Texas. When I got on the bench, in its 125th year history, I was the first person of color to ever sit on that bench. Everyone before me has been white, right? So I am the first person of color to ever sit on that oldest criminal court in Texas. I can also tell you a little bit about Dallas County. Dallas County is the 9th largest county in the United States. The city of Dallas is the 9th largest city in the United States. I serve 2.6 million people. That's who I serve. 28% are white, 22% are black, 40% are Hispanic, and 6% are Asian. So those are my people, right? Now, what does that mean? That means that in order for me to be elected, right, I have to talk to not 2.6 million people, but a whole lot of people that don't look like me, right? Because Asian Americans are only 6% of the population, Asian Americans alone can never get me elected or keep me elected. That's just the truth. Now, so what is next? I'm already in the middle of an election. I'm in the election for that intermediary appellate court, where my mentor and I started when I was in law school. That court is called the 5th District Court of Appeals, and it is, in my area, it has 6 counties: Dallas, Collin, Kaufman, Grayson, Rockwall, and Hunt. 6 counties, right? And the 5th District Court of Appeals is the largest appellate court in the state of Texas. It has 13 justices, and it is the largest. Texas only has 14 districts. We are about to create a 15, but the one that Dallas sits in is the largest court. In its 135th year history, there has never been a single Asian American to sit on that court. Not a single one. And if I win next year, I will be the first Asian American to ever sit on that court. So, I tell you all that because I want to now talk about you, right? Now you know a little bit about me. Now let's talk about you. As Asian Americans, that's, I guess, all of us, as Asian Americans, let me give you a little bit of numbers about the past. From 1960 to 2010, Asian American population went up from 1 million to 17 million in the United States. The projection is that by 2060, that number will double from 17 million to over 35 million. We are the fastest growing racial or ethnic group in America. In 2021, in America, we saw a 339% spike in anti-Asian hate crimes. 339% rise throughout America of anti-Asian hate crimes. Polls that were done trying to understand why that spike has been happening show that 1/3 of America, 33% of Americans, believe that Asian Americans are more loyal to countries of their ancestral origin than to America. In other words, they believe that you are Korean, not Korean American. They do not believe that you put America first. They believe that you put another country before America, right? Yes. And that's where that spike is happening. You and I both know that you cannot influence anyone if they believe that you are other than them. See, you can always influence people when it's we, but you can't influence anyone when they believe you are an other person, right? So, here's where I want you to understand the numbers are. In 2012, this was a presidential year in 2012, only 47% of Asian Americans voted in the presidential race. Let me tell you about how other people voted. 66% of Black Americans voted, 64% of white voters voted, and 48% of Hispanic voters voted, 1% more than Asian. So Asian Americans were the lowest voting group in all of America. In 2012, 56% of Asian American voters were even registered to vote, compared to 59% of Hispanic voters, 73% of Black voters, and 73% of white voters. We were the lowest in registered to vote. Now, let me come to the present time. Asian Americans are underrepresented in American politics. Asian Americans are 6% of the United States population, and they are 0.9% of the electeds. In other words, we are not even 1% of the elected officials in America. Let me give you a way to contrast. African Americans, Black Americans in America are only 14% of the population. Only 14%. But the number of elected officials that are Black highly exceeds that 14%. So, where they are succeeding with political power, we are underrepresented in political power. So, Asian Americans, therefore, lack representation when it comes to business issues, safety issues, home issues, financial issues, education issues. You have no voice in any of those areas because no one is speaking on your behalf, because we are underrepresented, even though our population says that we should have at least 6% of elected officials. There was a Harvard study, I don't know if many of you know this. You know, Korean Americans, Korean moms love to tell their children, you gotta get into Harvard, right? Never mind that you don't want to go to Harvard, they tell you, you gotta get into Harvard. And so Korean kids study really, really hard, and we have a lot of our kids who do go to Harvard. That's a wonderful thing, right? But you know what Harvard found? That when Korean American kids get to Harvard, they don't succeed at Harvard, right? And they thought, I don't understand, because these kids test so high, their high school applications look phenomenal. So why is it when they get to Harvard, they're not succeeding at Harvard? And they did a study. Like, they were so confused. They did a study to find out. Do you know what they found out? They said it was because, see, when they're in your house, right, you tell them when to get up, what to do, what to think, how to do it, when to do it, and you push them every moment of the day. When they leave your house, they don't know how to do it. They have no incentive of their own, and they have no dreams of their own, because going to Harvard was your dream, not their dream. Right? So you haven't taught them how to become an adult. You gave them a goal, and they met your goal, but you didn't teach them how to have their own goal. And so Harvard decided that they had to teach these students other skills other than what a college would normally teach them. That was how you got these kids to succeed, right? So, in North Texas, I'm going to circle back to that. In North Texas, currently, let me tell you at least about what I know. There are only 4 elected Korean Americans in North Texas. 2 of them are city council people, and 2 of them are judges. One is a male city council person, City Councilman John Jun. One is a female city councilman, and she is City Councilman Tanisa Messer Shagan. I'm probably butchering her last name, but it's Minor Shagan, I think. One male judge, Judge Alex Kim, and I'm the female judge. And I have the largest electorate, meaning I get elected by the most people, and I have been there the longest. So, I'm telling you some of this because the vast bulk of our conversation then needs to be about Asian Americans, specifically Korean Americans, and our future, right? Because this is a leadership talk. And so, regardless of what you want to be a leader in, whether it's in this organization, whether it's in the PTA, whether it's in your community, whether it's in your church, right? Does not matter where you want to be a leader. Leadership skills are all the same, right? But leadership skills are different for women than they are men. Because if you are a very strong female leader, sometimes you get called a bad name, right? If you are a man and you have a strong personality, he's confident. He's a leader. Boy, he knows what he's doing. If you are a woman who is outspoken, you are bossy. You are a witch, right? And you are just not doing what you should. And that's even more true, I think, even specifically as an Asian American, Korean American. Because Korean Americans, even though South Korea is changing, right, in immigrant society, that view and role of women is still the same as it was in the 2000s, in the 1990s, in the 1980s, in the 1970s, right? That part has not changed. So one of the things that I want you to think about when you think about how to become a leader in 2023 is to think about how you change that role. That role. Because I can tell you, a young teenage girl living in America, looking at what you and I think of leadership, may not want to be a leader like that. So what example do you set for them? Think about that Harvard example. You tell them what to do as long as they're in your house. They're not in your house that long. So what do they do, and what example do they see? What do they decide to become when they're no longer in your house? And that's part of the problem. Because leadership should never start and end with just you. Leadership, true leadership, only works if you are raising the next group to replace you. And they should do it better than we did, right? That's a part of leadership. It's not just about you. Because if it ends with you, our lifespan is only so deep, right? I'm not trying to be mean, but none of us are 20 years old in this room. None of us. So we only have so much longer. Someone has to replace us, and they have to go faster and further than we did. So the issue of leadership is not just about what you do in this room or what you do for yourself. It's about what you do to replace yourself. That's true leadership. If you are afraid that someone is going to replace you, then you should not be in leadership. You should always assume that someone is going to replace you. And you should be glad that they are, right? Because that means you did your job. No one can become a good leader who has not been a good follower, right? Let me tell you the reason why I decided, this is just me, other people do it differently. Let me tell you why I decided to start a municipal court. Because I wasn't sure that I'd be a good judge, right? So I started at the very, very bottom level because I wanted to stick my toe in and try to see. And then I went to the next level because I thought, you know what, I'm still young. I want to learn how to be a judge at the bottom levels, right? After that, after I did a good job at that first level, second level, now I'm at the third level, right? And I've done a pretty darn good job there too. And so now I'm going to go to the next level before the highest level. If I get there, which I'm pretty sure that I will tell you that I will become the highest Korean American elected in the state of Texas, which is the second largest state in the United States. And I tell you that for a reason. I tell you that because if I don't say that, right, no one else will recognize that. And if I don't say that, can I tell you, there are lots of men who have gotten elected, Korean American men, not the ones that I'm talking about that are still there, who then told other Korean Americans that they were the first Korean American elected. And do you know that I had to have other American citizens say, no, you're not. Tina was elected before you. But I will tell you, men will say things like that. Sorry. So as a woman, there has to be some amount of truth-telling, and you can't call that being overly confident. You can't say that she's just bragging, because when men do it, it's not bragging for men. So why is it bragging for women? The truth is still the truth. And you don't have to say that it's bragging. It's just the truth, right? So why don't we be leaders who tell the truth?
Yes.
You can't become a leader without helping other people. The 4 of us that are elected in North Texas have agreed that we're going to meet at least once every 6 months so that we can communicate with each other. We can figure out how, for those who are interested in becoming elected, we can help them, and how we can make sure that we are giving a hand to those who want to follow in our steps. I think it's one of our duties, right? You have to help others. And no one can become a leader without constantly learning. It does not, if you are staying in the same place doing the same thing that you have always done, right? You're not a leader, you're just comfortable, right? Being a leader means that you become uncomfortable. You have to constantly learn, and you have to constantly evolve, right? So let's talk about female leadership, because I've already touched on the fact that it looks different than sometimes male leadership. Sometimes we are kinder, sometimes we are more critical, especially of other women. It's true. And so I want to talk about how some of that needs to change. Women need to lift other women, especially with formality, right? Especially with formality. Korean society is a relatively formal society. We call each other by titles, we call each other by honorifics. And in American culture, sometimes we don't know whether we're doing it American style or Korean style, and sometimes it just becomes temple, right? We sometimes kind of mix it up and we're not quite sure. I would tell you that when in doubt, go formal. Okay? When in doubt, be formal, because you are never going to insult anyone by being formal. And not only that, it's a way to lift each other up. Let me tell you how I mean by that. I have a lot of other women that I know that are elected, and we all call each other by our first name. I call them Tammy, I call them Sheena, I call them Melissa. I call them by their name. If you were coming to me and I was talking to my friend, we would laugh, we would be talking, we would be acting like old buddies. And if you came to me and I said, "Oh, it's wonderful to see you, Ms. Kim," I would say, "Let me introduce you to the Honorable Judge Melissa Bellin. Judge Bellin, this is Ms. Kim. She is a leader in this organization. She is one of our hosts, right? And she is a fantastic community leader. You are gonna love getting to know her. Ms. Kim, Judge Bellin sits on whatever court, whatever, and I'm gonna tell you a little bit about her, right? And I'm gonna say, this is a wonderful opportunity for you to get to know each other, right? It does not matter that she is my friend. I am still going to use every title and give her the dignity that is required. Because by building her up and building you up, it sets the stage for both of you to start with a respectful relationship, right? And so I want you to understand that if you don't build up another woman, who do you expect will? Right? The man in the room? Remember, Korean American society and American society is still vastly patriarchal. It is still vastly men-led. It is still vastly male-dominated, and there is still a lot of discrimination about women in leadership. So if women do not give that dignity to other women, then there is no chance that we are going to make a dent against male leadership. So, with that information, I want you to understand there is a space for modesty, but there is absolutely a space for confidence, right? There is a space for confidence. And let me tell you the other aspect of that that is very important. Your daughters, I don't care if it's your biological daughter or our daughters in the community, our daughters, right, need to see both modesty and confidence if they are going to grow up to be the leaders we want them to be. So, I will then tell you how this looks like. And I will tell you because, again, I'm trying to explain how we have to change female leadership. Since I was 29 years old, I have taught all over the United States. I've taught men and women. I have taught police departments. I have taught the FBI. I taught at law schools. I currently teach for an organization called the Texas Center for Judiciary, which means I teach other judges in the state of Texas who are elected. I currently also teach for the State Bar of Texas. So I just got here from Galveston where I was teaching a whole bunch of Texas lawyers how to be Texas lawyers. And I teach men and I teach women. I teach a whole lot of men because there are lots of male judges and there are lots of male lawyers, more so than women. So I teach more men than I do women, right? I tell you that because it is important that you have your resume. You have to know what you have confidence about. You have to know what you are going to tell people about yourself so that, remember, no one is going to give you, right? They're not going to give you that kind of praise. You need to earn it, right? Leadership is not something that's given. Leadership is something that is earned. So you have to make sure that you know what your qualifications are and that you are proud of your qualifications. You've worked hard for those qualifications. So when someone asks you about it, don't be shy about it. There is a place for modesty, right? But there is a place for confidence, especially in those leadership roles. Leadership looks different based upon your gifts. There is a place in leadership at every level, whether it's putting together an event like this, whether it is making sure that everything happens in a timely manner, or whether you are developing the next generation of leadership with our children, or whether you run for elected office yourself. There is a role in every place. There is a role that you can take because without those leadership skills, nothing happens, not even in a small PTA group. You have to have someone who takes the lead for anything to happen, even if it means getting a kid or a team to a soccer game. Everyone has to have someone who does the hard work. But regardless of what that is, right, you don't have to sit there and say, that is my only thing that I'm going to do. You can do civics, you can get people to the polls, you can get people to register. You can influence other people about joining a group like this and the causes that you hold dear. You can influence people in making sure that they know how children get to universities, right? That's very important. But I want to also talk about one thing. Even though I encourage you to do all of those things, I encourage you to do one more thing. Go outside of the Korean American community, right? As Asian Americans, all Asian Americans, not Korean Americans, all Asian American, we are 6% of the population. 6%. If the only people that you are influencing are other Korean Americans, we are not going to make changes in this world very fast. You are not going to influence a whole lot about a nation with just less than 6% of your neighbors. And so practice by figuring out where you can grow your influence. It may be with groups that are in your neighborhood, just your neighborhood people. Let them get to know you as a Korean American if they're not Korean American, right? And tell them about what you're passionate about. Do you know how popular K-dramas are right now? They will talk to you. If nothing else, they'll talk to you because they want your skincare routine. Right? Oh my goodness, you have beautiful skin. Have you heard my friends say this, my black friends say this? They go, you know what? You know, black Americans have a saying. They go, black doesn't crack. I said, you're right. And they go, Asians don't either. I said, you're right. Right? But you know what? That's because my black friends and I talk a whole lot, and black culture is not very different from Korean American culture. It's not. And if you actually talk to them, you will see how many similarities we have. Black churches, a lot like Korean churches. A lot like Korean churches. And so you need to get to know them so that you can influence them as well and learn from them, because they are a group who has, with 14% of American population, gained so much more political power, right? They have so much to teach us about gaining political power and a voice. And so I say these things to say there is so much growth, space for growth that we have as Korean American women and as leaders in our community. But I want you to think outside of the box. I don't want you to do the things that have always been done. I want you to know that there is permission for all of us to grow beyond that box, because no one should limit you and your potential and the potential of our children. My son, I don't have a daughter, I only have a son, is 9 years old, right? But he doesn't go, oh, you're just a woman. He says, I want to be a judge. How do I become a judge, Mom? And then he says, you get elected. I said, I do. He goes, I want to be elected. And I said, you can, son. Of course you can. And so we have these conversations about what he can become, right? Your children, their very, very first role model is you. And you don't want them to be limited, do you? You want them to believe they can do anything that they put their hearts and minds to, right? But you can't teach them that if you think that you don't have unlimited potential. You have to believe that about yourself. When you believe that about yourself, then your children will believe that about themselves, right? You can't be a believer, and if you don't believe in God, you can't go to someone else and say, believe in God. It doesn't work that way, right? So start with yourself. Know that you have unlimited potential as a woman to lead in any group and be the person that you want your children to emulate. And that is probably the best first place that I can at least give you. Do you have any questions?
질문 있으신 분 있으실까요? 저는 한 가지가 있는데 제가 먼저 해도 되실까요? 한국말로 해도 돼요? 한국말로 그러면 질문을 드리도록 할게요. 아까 전에 그 판사로 임명되는 그런 얘기를 해주셨는데, what do you think your strength when you were first elected among all these people? 그 판사로 그 선출될 때 굉장히 적은 그 에이시안 인원이었다고 하는데, 거기에서 우리 티나유 판사님의 그 스트렝스가 정말 뭐였을까? 어떤 것이 어필링이었을까가 굉장히 궁금했어요.
So, the very first thing I did when I decided that I needed to be elected and figure out how to get elected was that I went to every community and I told them that I would like to learn more about them. Right? So I went to them and I went to their meetings and I said, hi, my name's Tina Yu. I'm here because I'd like to learn more about your group. I'd like to learn more about you. What is important to you? And I listened. I didn't tell them a whole lot about me. And I did that over and over and over again. I went over and over and over to their meetings. And finally, at some point, some of them said, Tina, we've seen you here a lot. And I said, yeah. I said, I'm really interested in you. Right? My time showed them that I had a true interest in them. And that it wasn't about me getting their vote. It was about me getting to know them. And once I had proven that I really wanted to get to know them, then they wanted to get to know me. And by getting to know them, I could tell them what about me was very similar to them. Right? In black communities, I went to a lot of churches. My parents were missionaries. And I was very comfortable in church. And they said, you're really comfortable in a black church. Not a lot of people are comfortable in a black church. And I said, oh, black churches are just like Korean American churches. And they said, really? I said, yeah, our church goes really long. Right? No one's on time. And I said, and we raise our hands and we say hallelujah and amen. And they said, oh, you are comfortable in a black church. And I said, oh, yes. And they said, that is fantastic. And then I just became one of them. I went to Hispanic groups and I said, oh, I know what it's like. My mom and dad, they need me to read their mail and figure out what's going on. I got to get on the internet. And they said, yes. Well, the immigrant society in Hispanic communities are very still immigrant societies, right? And so I talked to them about communication issues, translation issues, and about family, because Hispanic families are very family oriented. I'm like, oh yeah, my entire family meets all the time. Like I got my cousins, I got my aunts, I got 5 aunts, I got, I've got all this family that meets all the time and we're kind of tied to each other's hips. And they said, we are too. And I said, I know. I said, we're alike. And so I went to every community and I made sure that they could see me, right? That they could see me as a part of them.
혹시 다른 질문 있으실까요? 질문? 너무 이야기를 즐겁게 들으셔서
There's a hand, I think, back there. Yeah.
You did wonderful.
It's a comment. Did you have a question? Did I see a hand? Yes?
I just have one simple question.
Of course.
Yes.
How did you integrate into the Korean society, because you only speak English? So I wanted to know how you became friendly to Korean community.
한국말을 조금 할 수 있어요. 근데 단어가 딸려서요. 한국말로 이런 leadership 말씀을 하기 좀 어른의 하우스 얘기하는 거 비슷해서요. 이런 단어가 미국말로 해야지 좀 말이 되죠. 한국말로는 뭐 앉아서 교회에서 나누고 그런 말씀은 할 수 있습니다. 네.
Speak well, thank you.
네.
혹시 또 얘기를 나누시고 싶거나 예. 여기 또 한 분 계십니다.
저는
간단한 거예요. 왜 데모크래트 파리를 그거를 선택하셨는지.
I am a Democrat because I have democratic principles. So I believe in a big tent. In other words, I believe that every group should have representation, should have a seat at the table. I think that America works best when power is held by everyone, not a specific group. I also believe in a living wage. I believe that even the lowest wage worker should have a certain amount of hourly wage so that they don't have to work 3 jobs just to pay rent. I believe that people should have dignity in what they do. I believe in immigration. I believe in immigration. I believe that America is not about just one group. That America is what it is because everyone who immigrated at any point in time made this country a better place. I believe that justice works when we are smart about how we deal with justice. In other words, I do criminal cases primarily right now. If I'm not going to put you in prison until you die, at some point you're going to come back out in society. And if I can't figure out how you fit back in society, then you become a dangerous person because I've held you for a long time and never taught you how to be a part of society. So instead of just locking people up, for the interest of society, it is better if I figure out how to get you out of the criminal justice system and teach you to be a better person in society rather than just locking you up and then spending money doing that over and over and over again. Because unless I'm going to lock you up for the rest of your life, what do we do with you? After 5 years, what do I do with you? If you have no skill and no training and no way of becoming a better person because now I've called you a criminal, what do I do with you? And so my sense of policy as a judge is that I have to look beyond just now. And I can't lock you up just because I'm mad at you. I have to lock you up because you are someone who we have to separate out from society for the rest of your life. If you are going to be a person who is in society, I got to do something else with you. So I have very specific democratic principles that I believe, that I've been raised with, right? And because of that, I chose the Democratic Party.
Thank you. 감사합니다. 시간이 저희 판사님이 빨리 비행을 하셔야 되는 시간 관계 때문에 저희가 이제는 랩업을 해야 될 것 같죠? 네, 그래서 아까 전에 우리 이회연 전